2, 1.
Hi. This is something different. This is not from my book. And occasionally I'm going to put something on YouTube and it'll also appear in my Facebook, which I'm going to call Off the Cuff and Off the Book. And this is from a book that I'm reading now called Stalingrad. And it's written by an author who really touches me deeply, and his name is Vasily Grossman. And he wrote this, and if you knew me well at all, you would know how much this would mean to me, because he's speaking of a fictional character named Krymov, who is a military commissar attached to the army in 1942 as it moves closer and closer to Stalingrad. And on his travels, he stops at the country home of Lev Nikolaevich Tolstoy, who has not lived, of course, on his country estate for a very long time, because he died in 1910. So he didn't have the misfortune of seeing the changes that happened within his country. And this one is such a huge change because this is the midst of World War II. And he visits Yasnaya Polyana, and this is what he remembers. On the road to Tula, Krymov stopped at Yasnaya Polyana. The house was in the grip of feverish departure preparations. The paintings had been taken down from the walls. Tablecloths, dishes, and books had all been packed. The hall was full of boxes ready to be transported east. In peacetime, Krymov had once spent a day there with a group of foreign comrades. The museum staff had done what they could to create the illusion that this was a house where people still went about their daily lives. There were fresh flowers everywhere, and the dining room table was neatly laid. And yet, the moment they all went inside, the moment Krymov put on the obligatory cloth overshoes and heard the pious voice of the guide, it became only too obvious that the master and mistress of the house were dead. This was not a house, but a museum, a sepulchre. But when he went inside this second time, Krymov felt that this was a Russian house like any other. The storm that had flung open every door in Russia, that had driven people out of their warm homes and onto the black autumn roads, sparing neither peaceful city apartments, nor village huts, nor hamlets deep in the forest, had treated Lev Tolstoy's home no less harshly. It too was preparing to leave, in rain and snow, along with the entire country, the entire people. Yasnaya Polyana was a living, suffering Russian home, one of thousand upon thousand of such homes. With absolute clarity, Krymov saw in his mind bald hills and the old sick prince. The present merged with the past. Today's events were one with what Tolstoy described with such truth and power that it had become the supreme reality of a war that ran its course 130 years ago. Tolstoy no doubt had found it painful to describe the long and bitter retreat of the first months of that distant war. He might well have wept as he described how the old prince, close to death, had muttered, "My soul aches," and had been understood only by his daughter, Maria. And then Tolstoy's granddaughter, Sofia Andreeva, came out of the house, calm, downcast, shivering a little in spite of the coat thrown over her shoulders. Once again, Krymov did not know whether this was Princess Maria going out for a last walk around the garden before the French arrived, or whether it was Lev Tolstoy's elderly granddaughter scrupulously fulfilling the demands of her fate, applying all her heart and soul as she prepared to leave to checking the accuracy of her grandfather's account of the princess's earlier departure from this same home. Krymov went to Tolstoy's grave. Damp, sticky earth, damp, unkind air, the rustle of autumn leaves underfoot, a strange sense of heaviness, the loneliness of this little mound of earth covered in dry maple leaves, and the living, throbbing connection between Tolstoy and all that was happening today. It was agonizing to think in a few days German officers might come to this grave, laughing, smoking, talking in loud voices. Suddenly the air above him was shattered. Junkers with an escort of Messerschmitts were passing overhead, about to bomb Tula. A minute later, from a few miles to the north, came the dull roar of dozens of anti-aircraft guns. Then the earth trembled, shaken by the explosion of bombs. To Krymov it seemed as if Tolstoy's dead body must have felt this trembling. Thank you for listening.